Shabbat Shalom. First and foremost, thank you. Thank you to our president, Kevin Ginsburg, and the EC and our board leadership for leading a synagogue that understands clergy burnout and the wisdom of giving your rabbi a sabbatical. Thank you to now Rabbi and now Associate Rabbi, Rachel Posner. Yes, we can. For her dedication and love and tireless efforts to steward our community with Torah and wisdom and compassion in my absence. I truly cannot imagine leaving our community in more capable hands. Thank you to Ed and to Lynn Ann and to Amy and Noel and to Dory and the whole staff and to the ritual committee and to the Gabbaim and to people who gave Divrei Torah and led services and to our Chevra Kadisha and to the countless people who stepped forward to lead our community in my absence. I've returned to a community that not only survived but thrived. There's some sort of joke here about how I should just go away more often. I continued to learn on my sabbatical. I logged into a class for my doctoral studies at JTS on the Aramaic of the Targumim from as far west as Hawaii and as far east as Abu Dhabi. I think I probably was the first person or top 5 to ever study the Aramaic of the Targumim in Abu Dhabi. Right? I wrote an article for the Jewish Journal of Los Angeles on Christian-Jewish relations and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I made some progress on another tshuva for the Committee on Law and Standards. I read a number of books that I look forward to sharing with you in the weeks and months to come, including Rabbi Yitz Greenberg's new theology called The Triumph of Life and Richard Elliott Friedman's book on the disappearance of God. And I was hoping to finish, I'm not quite there yet, but a long 560-page epic novel by David Grossman, an Israeli author, called To the End of the Land. But the focus of my time was traveling to see people who I love. And I think many of you know, training for and completing, and yes, I'm still wearing the bracelet to brag. It's not for completing a half Ironman triathlon in Hawaii and raising more than $21,000 for pancreatic cancer research in memory of Rabbi Sager and in memory of my late mother-in-law, Leslie Parker, Zichronam Livracha. Their memories are a blessing. I swam in pools, in the saltwater pool by the sea in Tel Aviv, and I swam in a pool in Iceland in a snowstorm. I swam in many of the free public pools in Hawaii on the Big Island. I went for runs around an incredible mosque in Abu Dhabi, in a park with a castle outside of London. I biked a 40-mile bike ride in February on the Golan Heights when I was visiting Ariel Sager and her family in February. And I biked in the jungles of the east side of the Big Island of Hawaii. There are too many stories for me to share in this one morning. For those of you who are curious, I think I am going to try to put together some sort of slideshow and Zoom presentation to share some more pictures and stories for those who are curious. Other stories will assuredly come out in the weeks and months to come. For now, I want to share one insight from this morning's Torah portion and perhaps connect it with an experience that I had while on the Big Island of Hawaii. Our Torah portion opens by describing how God gives to Pinchas his covenant of peace after his act of violent zealotry stops a plague that killed 24,000 Israelites when they betrayed God with the Midianites last week. God then orders a census of the people and describes how the land is to be apportioned to each of the tribes as they ready to enter the land. And then in chapter 27, the daughters of Tzlofchad, Mochla, Noah, Hogla, Milcah, and Tirzah come forward before Moshe and Eliezer and all the chieftains and all the community, and they make a claim about a fundamental injustice in the system of land inheritance that Moses has just described. Their father had no sons, and since the land is apportioned to male sons, their family's inheritance, their father's name will be lost. Give us a holding, tnu lanu, give us a holding in the midst of our father's brothers, they say. After 40 years of the people's complaints and God's angry responses, this scene breaks the pattern. Because these are people who are coming forward with a complaint, not to say, let's go back to Egypt, but to say, we want a share in the land. Moshe brings their case before God, and God says to Moshe, Ken benot Tzlofchad dovrot, the daughters of Tzlofchad speak Ken. They speak justly, rightly. Rashi fills in a backstory. He says Moses brings their case before God because the law on this subject actually has escaped him. Why? He brings two explanations. The second of those explanations is, and I'm going to quote Rashi, this chapter, who's quoting the Midrash, this chapter should have been written by Moshe. But the daughters of Tzlofchad merited to have it written by them. So by the way, the next time that we sing, V'zot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe, that we sing that the Torah comes from Moses, most of it does, but according to this Midrash, this part does not. It comes from Benot Tzlofchad. Rashi goes on to explain that God says, exactly so is this chapter written before me on high. This tells us that their eye saw what Moses' eye did not see. I've been imagining that scene many times. God, according to the Rabbi, and in other places, has a Torah in heaven. A Torah that, according to the rabbis, is pre-existent to the one that Moses receives and writes on Mount Sinai. Rather than rendering judgment, God looks into God's own unabridged edition of the Torah and says, what you're saying, that's how it's written before me in this Torah in the heavens. God has a Torah, it's a blueprint, according to the rabbis, for all of creation, and the daughters of Tzlofchad had a better view. I thought about this Midrash all week and asked Jen about it, what was going on. She immediately and simply exclaimed, yeah, it's women's intuition. That idea lives for me, women's intuition, in how when our boys were little, Jen used to wake up like clockwork 30 seconds or a minute before our boys would start crying. I will never know women's intuition, but in the waters of Hawaii and in the jungle on the remote east side of the island of the Big Island, I did come to better understand maybe what the rabbis mean when they say that God has a Torah in heaven and it's a blueprint for all of creation. I spent a month in Kona training for the triathlon, and I would get up nearly every morning and go for about a mile run to the pier that's in the middle of town. And from that pier, I would enter into the water and follow a swimming lane of buoys to complete a 1.2 mile swim to something called the King's Buoy, 0.6 miles and back. And every morning, I would enter those warm blue waters and make my way from buoy to buoy, and every once in a while, I would just stop. And I would just float over the coral that was 30 feet below. And I'd watch a school of fish or a sea turtle. And I'd listen to, there's a certain crackling that you can hear in the water when you're still. It's both muffled by the water, but also amplified by it. And I think when you hear that crackling, it's like listening to the Torah of the world, to this noise of life itself. And sometimes I'd be floating there in the middle of the waters, and I'd think about how that noise is there even at night, when the water is dark, or even beneath the surface, beneath the waves when there's a storm. And that Torah of the world lives on for me also in some sounds that I heard when the sun would go down on the east side of the Big Island, and I sat on my porch, and these jungle frogs started talking to each other, and you can hear them very clearly. One of them says, "Bop, bop," and the other one says, "Bop, bop," and they're talking to each other. And they're calling out to each other. In a minute, we're going to say the Kedusha, and we read about the angels who call one to the other, V'kara zeh el zeh ve'amar, holy, holy, holy. And I'm surrounded by this cackling conversation, and I think about it and know that right now, half a world away, it's still going on. And it's been happening for thousands of years, and God willing, for continue far into the future. And I just felt part of it, part of God's Torah. Last Sunday was the 17th of Tammuz. Tisha B'Av is 2 weeks away, which means Rosh Hashanah, Eric, I'm looking at you, is 9 weeks away. And on Shabbat Chazon, 2 weeks, the day before Tisha B'Av, we're going to read one of my favorite lines from a Haftorah. Isaiah describes God lamenting the sinfulness of the Jewish people, and he says, "The ox knows its owner, and the donkey its master's crib, but Israel does not know. My people do not understand." When I hear that line, I hear Isaiah or God saying, if you've lost your way from God, look at nature. It's not only on an island halfway around the world, it's around us always when we quiet our souls, watch an ox or perhaps a school of fish, or listen to the frogs in the jungle, or closer to home, the crickets at night. And that is where you will find your way back again. There is a Torah there, an old Torah that even I, God, need to read sometimes. And there are people, the daughters of Slofchad and Moses, who have a view and can see and read it. And maybe sometimes we can too. Thank you again for the time away, for the time to heal and renew and see and listen and swim and play in that Torah. And may God bless us to continue our learning from the Torah of Moses and God's Torah in heaven for many months and years to come. Shabbat Shalom.